Soren's spacecraft pierces Earth's atmosphere under the cover of night, the veteran xenobiologist's hearts racing with anticipation. After centuries studying predictable species across the galaxy, humans represent a true anomaly, a fragile species whose technological advancement defies their biological limitations. The Galactic Confederation's briefing was clear. Observe only, avoid interaction, and most importantly, maintain emotional distance. Landing in a remote forest clearing, Soren activates their molecular reconfiguration suite, wincing as bones crack and skin stretches into human form. Their ship's AI, Lix, reviews the mission parameters one final time. Subject species shows unprecedented developmental patterns. Lix warns, projection eyes narrowing. Humans have been classified as potentially hazardous due to psychological unpredictability. Soren dismisses the concern with a now human handwave. Every species follows evolutionary logic. These humans simply haven't revealed theirs yet. As dawn breaks over the horizon, Soren steps into the world wearing human skin, completely unprepared for how this mission will shatter everything they thought they knew about sentient life. The morning sun illuminates a small town nestled between rolling hills and a river valley. Soren consults their neural implant, confirming location. Riverbrook, population 15,421, selected for its proximity to Westlake University, where their academic cover identity awaits. Walking along quiet streets, Soren studies ordinary humans beginning their day. A jogger passes, breathing labored, face contorted in what appears to be pain. Yet the human waves cheerfully. Confusing. Why pursue an activity that causes distress? At a local establishment called Morning Brew, Soren attempts their first human interaction, ordering a coffee based on observational data of popular consumption patterns. The bitter liquid scalds their tongue, triggering pain receptors deliberately. Soren nearly spits it out before noticing everyone else seems to be enjoying the same sensation. Curiouser still. "First time with espresso?" asks an elderly human at the next table, eyes crinkling with amusement. "You'll get used to it. Soon you'll need 2 shots just to feel alive in the morning." Deliberately cultivating chemical dependency for stimulation, Soren makes a mental note. The apartment arranged by the Confederation awaits several blocks away. Soren pauses at a street crossing when screeching tires and honking erupts nearby. 2 vehicles have nearly collided. Instead of displaying fear at their near-death experience, the drivers exchange aggressive vocalizations and obscene gestures before continuing their journeys. Heart rates elevated, cortisol levels spiking, yet both humans simply incorporate the near-fatal incident into their routine without apparent trauma response. "Welcome home," says the property manager, handing over access credentials to Soren's dwelling. Heat's working, but the water pressure's temperamental. Building's old, but it's got character. Deliberately tolerating suboptimal living conditions for abstract aesthetic value. Another note. Inside the sparse apartment, Soren activates their secure communication link with Lix. Update mission parameters. Soren instructs, watching humans through the window navigating their fragile existence with bewildering casualness. Subject species displays significant deviation from standard risk assessment models. Humans appear to intentionally seek discomfort, danger, and inefficiency. Clarify observation. Lix responds, voice skeptical. They drink scalding bitter stimulants while expressing pleasure. They exercise to the point of physical distress for recreation. They experience near-death traffic incidents without subsequent behavioral modification. They prioritize character over functionality in habitats. Possible sensory processing abnormalities. Lix suggests. Perhaps pain reception is diminished in the species. Soren watches a human child fall, scrape its knees, cry briefly, then resume playing with undiminished enthusiasm. "No," Soren replies slowly. "They feel everything. They simply accept it differently. I require more data before forming conclusions." Exercise caution, Lix warns. Unpredictable species require unpredictable safety protocols. Soren nods, watching the street below where humans navigate 1,000 potential catastrophes with casual indifference. Tomorrow I begin at the university. If these are their ordinary citizens, I cannot wait to study their scholars. The communication ends, leaving Soren alone with the disturbing thought that after 300 years studying alien biology across 17 star systems, the most alien thing they've encountered might be the human capacity to normalize anything. Soren's cover identity as Dr. Xander Rinn, visiting cultural anthropology professor, grants immediate access to humanity's contradictions. During their first week at Westlake University, Rinn witnesses a peace rally that devolves into a fistfight, environmental activists arriving in fuel-burning vehicles, and a rational debate competition decided entirely by emotional appeals. Most baffling are the physical extremes humans routinely endure. Students who stay awake for 3 days straight during finals week, athletes who train until vomiting is a normal occurrence, and casual conversations about pushing through the pain, as though self-harm were virtuous. When Soren questions colleague Dr. Elena Chen about a student who collapsed during a charity run, she responds with a puzzling smile. That's just Thomas being Thomas. He always gives 110%. The mathematical impossibility goes unnoticed as she continues. Humans can endure almost anything if we believe it matters. That night, Soren sends their first field report, trembling slightly while typing. These beams normalize behaviors that would be considered pathological in any other known species. Most concerning, they consider this normal. The faculty lounge buzzes with conversation as Soren enters, clutching a datapad disguised as a tablet. 3 professors argue about climate policy with animated gestures, but no apparent hostility. Fascinating how humans can maintain social cohesion while expressing disagreement. Dr. Rinn calls Dr. Chen from beside the coffee machine. Join us. We're debating whether humanity is headed for extinction by our own hand, or if technology will save us. Cheerful morning topic, right? The casual discussion of species extinction over morning beverages stuns Soren momentarily. You discuss potential doom so comfortably. What's the alternative? Laughs Professor Rice from the archaeology department. Constant panic. Humans compartmentalize existential dread, or we'd never get anything done. The conversation shifts to classroom matters as Soren absorbs this revelation. Humans acknowledge their precarious existence, yet continue functioning. No other studied species maintains cognitive dissonance so effortlessly. Later, observing the university's training facility, Soren watches athletes deliberately pushing their bodies to failure. A runner on a treadmill increases speed until her legs give out. A lifter strains against weights until muscle failure forces the bar down. A swimmer practices holding breath until nearly passing out. Their coach shouts encouragement. Pain is just weakness leaving the body. Isn't this dangerous? Soren asks a nearby assistant coach. That's how you improve, the young man shrugs. No growth in the comfort zone. Deliberately seeking discomfort for hypothetical future advantage. The evolutionary calculation seems flawed. That evening, Soren attends a campus cinema showing a horror film. The experience proves most illuminating. Humans pay currency to be frightened, releasing stress hormones voluntarily. When a particularly shocking scene causes the audience to scream, Soren notices something remarkable. Many humans laugh immediately afterward. Terror transitions. The university's Extreme Sports and Risk Psychology Symposium leads Soren to Maya Winters, whose presentation features footage of her free climbing the glass face of the Meridian Tower, 72 stories without safety equipment. The auditorium erupts in applause rather than horror. Afterward, Soren approaches her with genuine confusion. You risked certain death for entertainment. Maya's laugh cascades through the reception hall. Not entertainment. Enlightenment. The edge between life and death is where everything becomes crystal clear. Their conversation stretches into dinner, where Maya introduces Soren to her remarkably diverse friend circle. Hiroshi, who free dives to depths that should crush human lungs. Elena, who races ultramarathons through Death Valley temperatures. Jackson, who creates culinary experiences with ingredients barely within toxicity thresholds. And Devon, who performs motorcycle stunts that violate multiple laws of probability. Over drinks, they share stories of near-death experiences with laughter and nostalgia, as though reminiscing about pleasant vacations. When Soren finally asks why they court death so intimately, Devon raises a glass with a prosthetic hand that replaced one lost in a previous stunt. Because when you survive something that should kill you, every moment afterward feels like stolen time, and nothing tastes sweeter than stolen joy. The others clink glasses in agreement, while Soren realizes with growing unease that these extremists consider themselves perfectly ordinary humans. The symposium reception buzzes with conversation as Soren navigates toward Maya, who stands surrounded by admirers yet somehow looks bored by their praise. "Professor Rin," she says, noticing Soren hovering nearby. "You had a question during my talk, the one about risk calculation that ran out of time." Soren nods, surprised she remembered. "I was curious how you quantify potential death against momentary experience. The equation seems unbalanced." Maya's eyes light up with genuine interest. Finally, someone asking the real question. She glances at her watch. "I'm meeting friends for dinner. Care to join? They're all risk specialists of different kinds. You might find them illuminating." The restaurant sits atop a skyscraper, glass floors revealing the dizzying drop below. Humans eat while suspended above certain death, separated only by transparent material. Unnecessarily terrifying by design. Soren notes how diners occasionally glance down, some with excitement, others with controlled fear they seem to savor. Maya's friends represent a confounding data set. Hiroshi discusses holding his breath for 9 minutes underwater, as casually as describing the commute. Elena shows photos of her feet after running 170 miles through scorching desert, skin blistered beyond recognition, with pride rather than trauma. Jackson explains his latest culinary creation, involving slightly neurotoxic pufferfish, with the enthusiasm of someone describing a safe hobby. Devon, whose prosthetic right hand gleams in the restaurant lighting, demonstrates how he can now incorporate the artificial limb into motorcycle stunts better than the original. "I still don't understand," Soren says finally. "You all regularly risk permanent injury or death, yet you consider this recreational." The group exchanges looks that Soren can't quite interpret. "You ever been in a near-death situation, Professor?" Devon asks, mechanized fingers tapping his glass. "No." Soren lies, thinking of 3 xenobiological expeditions gone catastrophically wrong. "There's this moment," Devon continues, "when you're absolutely certain you're going to die. Everything slows down. Your brain dumps every chemical it's got. And then, somehow, you survive. That moment when you realize you're still alive." He shakes his head. Nothing compares. Not sex. Not drugs. Nothing. The others nod in agreement. "Humans aren't adrenaline junkies because we're crazy," Maya adds softly. "We do it because we're the only species that can find meaning in our mortality instead of just fearing it." Soren takes careful mental notes. This explains so much about human advancement patterns, their willingness to explore, to experiment, to risk annihilation for discovery. "So you believe this is normal human behavior?" Soren asks. Maya laughs, gesturing around the table. "We're not special, Professor. Everyone has their own version of this. Some climb mountains, some start businesses, some fall in love knowing it might end badly. Humans run toward uncertainty. It's basically our defining characteristic." Soren's field report that night contains a disturbing revelation. Humans don't just normalize risk. They've evolved to require it. The earthquake strikes at 2:17 a.m., magnitude 8.4, with an epicenter directly beneath downtown. Soren awakens to their apartment walls cracking, evolutionary instincts screaming to seek shelter and protect themselves. Racing outside, they expect to find humans doing the same, fleeing to safety as any rational being would. Instead, they'd witness the inexplicable. Humans running toward collapsing buildings, forming improvised rescue teams, and shouting for volunteers. Maya pulls up on her motorcycle, face streaked with dust. The Victoria apartments collapsed. Families trapped inside. Coming. Every instinct in Soren's genetically engineered body refuses, but scientific curiosity overrides. Inside the precarious wreckage, Maya and dozens of civilians, not emergency personnel, ordinary humans, crawl through gaps that could collapse any second. When they hear children crying behind a concrete slab, Maya and Soren attempt to move the immovable. Soren freezes, paralyzed by entirely reasonable fear, whispering, "We could die here." Maya's response haunts them. Being scared is normal. Doing it anyway is human. Together they rescue 3 children, emerging as the building groans its final protest before collapsing completely. At the makeshift medical center, Soren watches humans working past exhaustion, doctors performing surgery by cell phone light, strangers comforting strangers, many ignoring their own injuries to treat others worse off. A woman gives birth amid the chaos, her newborn's first cries mixing with cheers from dust-covered rescuers who paused briefly before returning to their impossible tasks. That night, treating a child's broken arm, Soren finally understands what makes humans different. They've evolved to find purpose through struggle rather than avoid it. The thunderous roar yanks Soren from sleep, their simulated human body reacting with genuine terror as ceiling plaster rains down. The building sways violently, furniture sliding across the floor. Through the window, power outages create patches of darkness across the city grid, punctuated by fires erupting in several districts. Calculation. Optimal survival requires immediate evacuation to spacecraft. Protocol dictates non-interference with natural disasters. This represents perfect observational opportunity. Soren memorizes these facts while their body automatically rushes to the street. Outside, sirens wail as emergency vehicles navigate debris-strewn roads. But something unexpected dominates the scene. Ordinary humans organizing themselves without official direction. A middle-aged woman in pajamas directs traffic around a fallen power line. Teenagers distribute bottled water from a corner store whose windows have shattered. An elderly man uses his walking cane to clear broken glass from a wheelchair ramp. Gander. Maya's voice cuts through the chaos. Her motorcycle skids to a stop beside Soren, its headlight illuminating dust coating her face, except for clean tracks where tears have fallen. Victoria apartments collapsed. 6 floors, 40 units, mostly families. The emergency services are overwhelmed with multiple building failures. Civilians are handling it. You coming? The question violates every protocol in Soren's training. Confederation guidelines explicitly forbid intervention in species-threatening events. This represents prime research opportunity from safe distance. Yes, Soren says, surprising themselves. The collapsed apartment building resembles nothing so much as a concrete accordion. Floors pancaked upon each other with tiny gaps between. Professional rescuers have established a perimeter but are drastically undercapacitated. The remarkable element. Dozens of ordinary humans have spontaneously organized into search teams, sharing flashlights, bottles of water, and rudimentary medical supplies. Ever done this before? Maya asks, handing Soren a flashlight. No, Soren admits truthfully. Stay close. Follow my lead. If I say run, you run. They enter through a gap barely large enough for a human body. The darkness inside the collapsed structure feels absolute, broken only by scattered flashlight beams and the occasional glow of a trapped survivor's phone. The air tastes of concrete, dust, and fear. Hello. Anyone here? Maya calls periodically, listening intently after each call. 30 minutes in, they hear it. faint crying behind a concrete slab that has fallen at an angle against a support beam, creating a small pocket of survival. Children. Maya whispers, her flashlight revealing 3 small figures huddled together. A boy, perhaps 7 years old, shields 2 younger girls with his body. The slab blocking them weighs more than Maya and Soren combined. Attempting to move it risks further collapse. We need equipment, Soren says rationally. This requires mechanical assistance. They don't have time, Maya responds, bracing herself against the concrete. On 3, we lift. Soren stares at her. We cannot move this. The physics are impossible. On. Maya begins counting anyway. We could die here, Soren whispers, genuine terror rising. Maya pauses, meeting Soren's eyes. Being scared is normal. Doing it anyway is human. 2. Soren positions themselves beside her. 3, they lift, muscles straining beyond capacity, tendons threatening to snap. The slab moves, imperceptibly at first, then enough for the oldest child to pull his sisters through the gap. Outside, the rescued children are whisked to medical attention, while Maya and Soren collapse against a car, exhausted. Behind them, the remaining structure groans once, twice, then implodes completely. We would have died if we'd waited, Soren realizes. Maya nods, too tired to speak. That night, helping at an emergency shelter, Soren finally understands. Humans don't thrive despite crisis. They become their truest selves within it. Soren's encrypted transmission to the Confederation causes immediate alarm, triggering an emergency council session. The report details phenomena previously thought impossible. Humans seek stress that other species avoid, deliberately engaging pain circuits for recreational purposes. They form social bonds with complete strangers based on abstract principles. They routinely sacrifice personal safety for collective benefit without genetic relationship motivation. Most alarmingly, they've developed nuclear weaponry capable of planetary destruction, yet continue functioning with this existential threat normalized as background anxiety. In conclusion, Soren writes, humans not only survive conditions that would cause psychological collapse in other sentient species, they appear to derive meaning from these conditions. Their evolutionary trajectory optimized for adaptation to crisis rather than crisis avoidance. As they approach interstellar capabilities, the Confederation must prepare for contact with a species fundamentally different from any previously encountered. The report spreads through classified channels, eventually reaching Admiral Vex of the Hegemony, the militaristic faction that split from the Confederation centuries ago. Vex's reaction is immediate. Species with unpredictable response patterns cannot be allowed unrestricted interstellar access. Begin containment protocols. Meanwhile, Soren's research continues, unaware their academic observations have triggered a military response. As they document human art, stories that deliberately evoke grief, music that intentionally creates tension, images that disturb yet fascinate. Soren receives an anonymous message carrying hegemony encryption. Assessment complete. Intervention imminent. Evacuation recommended. The warning signature comes from Trill, a former classmate now working in hegemony intelligence, risking everything to alert an old friend. In the university's secure basement lab, Soren activates the quantum encryption matrix. The process takes triple the standard time. Earth's infrastructure, damaged by the earthquake, struggles to supply consistent power. Another researcher might find this frustrating. Soren notes how quickly they've normalized inconvenience, human behavioral patterns proving contagious. The holographic interface finally stabilizes, displaying the Confederation seal before revealing Supervisor Kalla's stern features. Her extra set of eyes blink rapidly, a sign of profound distress in their species. Your report has caused significant concern, Researcher Soren. She begins without greeting. The Council questions the accuracy of your observations. The behaviors you described violate fundamental principles of evolutionary psychology. I understand the skepticism, Soren replies, "I wouldn't believe it myself had I not witnessed it. Sending additional evidence now." The files transfer. Footage of the earthquake response, Maya's symposium presentation, medical data showing humans deliberately damaging muscles to strengthen them, entertainment content designed to trigger fear responses, art intended to provoke grief. Kayla reviews it silently, all four eyes widening. "This changes everything," she whispers finally. A species that processes existential threats as motivational stimuli cannot be predicted using standard models. Their extinction coefficient is incalculable. Precisely, Soren agrees. Their most distinctive trait isn't intelligence or technology. It's psychological. They normalize crisis to function within it rather than avoid it. And they're approaching interstellar capability, Kayla murmurs. The implications. They could become the most successful expansion species in galactic history. Soren completes her thought. Or the most dangerous. Continue observation. Priority elevated to critical. The Council needs. The transmission stutters. Kayla's image fragmenting before stabilizing. Security breach detected. Transmission compromised. Protocol silence initiating. The connection terminates abruptly, leaving Soren staring at emptiness. That evening, exploring human music, compositions deliberately structured to create tension and resolution, emotional manipulation by mathematical design. Soren's secure tablet chimes with an encrypted message from an unauthorized source. The decryption takes 17 seconds, revealing text carrying hegemony signatures. Assessment complete. Intervention imminent. Evacuation recommended. The signature code belongs to Trill, a xenopsychology student from Soren's academic cohort who joined Hegemony Research Division after ideological disagreements with Confederation policies. Sending this warning constitutes treason against her faction. Soren attempts to reestablish connection with Kayla. All channels return error messages. From the apartment window, Soren watches humans rebuilding after the earthquake, working together, laughing despite destruction, normalizing catastrophe into merely another day. The species that treats apocalypse as inconvenience now faces a threat they cannot see coming. For the first time in 3 centuries of scientific objectivity, Soren confronts an uncomfortable realization. They care about the research subjects. The thought brings neither pride nor shame, only certainty that protocols must be broken. While Soren studied humanities academics and risk-takers, hegemony operators infiltrated military installations, corporate boardrooms, and criminal organizations. Humanity's darker corners. Commander Drav's team observed humans negotiating peace while developing weapons, executives discussing ethics while approving environmental destruction, and crime lords showing tenderness to family after ordering executions. Their conclusion, delivered to Admiral Vex in person. Humans compartmentalize contradiction to degrees previously thought cognitively impossible. They can maintain mutually exclusive ethical frameworks simultaneously, justifying virtually any action through contextual morality. The evidence is damning. Footage of a general weeping over battlefield casualties before ordering another bombing run. A charity founder embezzling from their own organization while passionately advocating for its cause. Ordinary citizens donating to disaster relief while voting against preventative measures. Most concerning, humans understand these contradictions and consider them normal. The Hegemony Council decides Earth must be contained without direct confrontation. Humans' unpredictable responses make military action too risky. Instead, they deploy gravitational disruptors at strategic fault lines and weather manipulation devices in the upper atmosphere, designed to trigger cascading natural disasters that will collapse human infrastructure while appearing entirely natural. The operation proceeds with ruthless efficiency, devices embedding themselves deep within Earth's oceans and mantle. As Soren pieces together climate anomalies and seismic irregularities, they realize with horror that the hegemony isn't just studying humanity. They're attempting to neutralize it. The moral question crushes them. Does scientific neutrality still apply when it means watching an entire species face extinction? Commander Drav stands motionless in the observation chamber, chrome-plated neural receivers gleaming against their scaled skull. The military-grade holographic projection shows a human generals meeting discussing casualty projections with clinical detachment. Notice the physiological indicators. Drav instructs the gathered hegemony analysts. Elevated cortisol, pupil dilation, increased heart rate, clear distress signals, yet their cognitive functions remain unimpaired. No other species maintains analytical capability under such emotional load. The projection shifts to a corporate boardroom where executives review environmental impact reports showing catastrophic outcomes while approving the project anyway. Observe the compartmentalization. Drav continues. Subject acknowledges harm while simultaneously justifying it through abstracted benefit calculations. The contradiction produces no observable cognitive dissonance. A final projection. Ordinary humans donating money to disaster victims while voting against infrastructure that would prevent similar catastrophes. Their moral processing defies neurological models, Drav concludes. Humans can hold mutually exclusive ethical frameworks simultaneously. This makes their response patterns fundamentally unpredictable. Admiral Vex steps forward, battle scars luminescent under the projection light. Recommendations. Direct confrontation presents incalculable risk. These beings normalize contradiction, crisis, and mortality. We cannot predict their response to contact. Drav's voice remains emotionless despite the gravity of the assessment. However, they remain biologically vulnerable. Their advancement depends entirely on infrastructure stability. Proceed, Vex commands. Beneath Earth's oceans, automated hegemony crafts deposit gravitational disruptors along major fault lines. In the upper atmosphere, weather manipulation devices integrate with existing cloud formations. The technology appears primitive by galactic standards, yet operates with perfect precision, calibrated to trigger natural disasters that humans will attribute to geological activity or climate change. Meanwhile, Soren studies meteorological patterns from their university office, frowning at data anomalies, weather systems moving against prevailing winds, microseismic readings showing harmonic patterns inconsistent with natural geological activity. Professor Rin. A student interrupts Soren's concentration. The department's wondering if you'll still give today's lecture with everything happening. Everything happening. Soren asks. The Weather Service just issued storm warnings for 3 coastal cities, and there's been another earthquake in California. Small one, but it's the 5th this week. People are saying it's climate change accelerating faster than models predicted. Soren returns to the data, recognizing patterns consistent with specific hegemony technology designed to appear as natural phenomena. The realization hits with stunning clarity. This isn't observation. It's extermination through manufactured natural disaster. That evening, comparing atmospheric pressure anomalies with seismic reading patterns, Soren calculates the hegemony strategy. Multiple simultaneous disasters designed to overwhelm human response capabilities. The earthquake that struck the city wasn't natural. It was a test run. Soren's communication device activates with a direct connection from Trill, their former classmate now embedded in hegemony operations. They're calling it humane containment, Trill whispers. No direct attack, just engineered disasters increasing in frequency and intensity. Humans will exhaust themselves responding until systems collapse. Why risk contacting me? Soren asks. Because they're wrong about humans, Trill responds. I've been watching too. They're different. They deserve the chance to prove it. The connection terminates as Soren watches clouds gather on the horizon. Clouds moving against the wind, shaped by technologies humans don't yet understand. Maya's rooftop garden provides the only privacy Soren can trust, away from potential hegemony surveillance. The words feel impossible as they form. I'm not human. I'm a xenobiologist from a civilization you haven't discovered yet. Soren braces for disbelief, hostility, panic, any of the reactions their training predicted. Instead, Maya takes a sip of wine and nods thoughtfully. That actually explains a lot about you. Her friends react with variations of fascination rather than fear. Hiroshi immediately asks about underwater breathing techniques on other worlds. Elena wonders about the physiological differences between species. Jackson inquires about interstellar cuisine. And Devon, perhaps most surprisingly, asks about Soren's family. Do you miss them? Being so far from home. The conversation shifts from Soren's revelation to the imminent hegemony attack with disturbing casualness, the humans accepting potential apocalypse with the same adaptability they bring to everyday crises. When Soren apologizes for bringing disaster to their world, Maya laughs without humor. Please, we've been living with the end of the world for generations. Nuclear war, climate collapse, artificial intelligence, superviruses. If humans stopped functioning every time we faced extinction, we'd never get anything done. Their immediate pivot to countermeasures rather than recriminations stuns Soren. As the group devises a plan to locate and neutralize hegemony devices, using Devon's engineering skills and Hiroshi's diving expertise, Soren realizes that humanity's greatest strength isn't technology or biology. It's their collective psychological resistance to overwhelming odds, their ability to normalize the impossible and then overcome it. The city lights flicker below Maya's rooftop garden, after effects of infrastructure damage still lingering weeks after the earthquake. Ambient moisture from potted ferns glistens on Soren's skin as they struggle with words that violate every protocol of their 3-century career. I need to tell you something that will sound impossible. Soren begins, studying the faces of Maya and her friends gathered around a makeshift table of salvaged wood. You're not actually a visiting professor, Maya offers with a half-smile. I'm not actually human, Soren says, the words hanging in the humid evening air. Silence follows, not the panicked silence Soren expected, but a contemplative one. Maya takes a deliberate sip of wine, eyes never leaving Soren's face. That actually explains a lot about you, she says finally. The way you watch everyone like they're specimens in a lab. The weirdly formal speech patterns. How you asked if coffee was supposed to taste like that on your first day. Hiroshi leans forward, eyes bright with curiosity rather than fear. Can your species breathe underwater? Our respiratory systems are so inefficient. Elena studies Soren with newfound interest. What are the physiological differences? Your stamina seemed almost too perfect during the rescue operation. Jackson, ever focused on sensory experience, asks, what does food taste like to your kind? Do you experience flavors we can't perceive? Only Devon remains quiet, mechanical fingers tapping thoughtfully against his glass, before asking the question Soren least expected. Do you miss them? Your family, back wherever you're from? The question strikes Soren with surprising force. Yes, they admit. My familial cluster hasn't seen me in 27 years. So why reveal yourself now? Maya asks, cutting to the essential point. Soren explains everything. The hegemony, the manufactured disasters, the imminent escalation of natural catastrophes designed to collapse human civilization without appearing as attack. You're telling us someone's cranking up earthquakes and storms to kill us without getting their hands dirty, Devon summarizes bluntly. Yes, and I violated every protocol by warning you, Soren admits. Well, thanks for that, I guess, Maya responds, remarkably calm for someone just informed of impending apocalypse. You don't seem surprised by potential extinction, Soren observes. Maya laughs without humor. Please, we've been living with the end of the world for generations. Nuclear war, climate collapse, artificial intelligence, superviruses. If humans stopped functioning every time we faced extinction, we'd never get anything done. The group immediately shifts to practical concerns. Devon, with engineering expertise, suggests ways to locate gravitational disruptors. Hiroshi, who can hold his breath for miraculous periods, volunteers to investigate underwater anomalies. Elena maps locations where weather patterns show impossible characteristics. Jackson offers his restaurant as operations base. No one questions when chefs work strange hours. Their immediate pivot to countermeasures rather than recriminations stuns Soren. No denial. No bargaining. Just adaptation and response. "I'm sorry," Soren says suddenly. "My research brought this threat to your world." "Don't flatter yourself," Maya replies, not uncannily. "Humans attract disaster like magnets. If it wasn't your aliens, it would have been something else. At least now we know what we're fighting." Watching them plan, Soren finally understands humanity's true evolutionary advantage. Not intelligence, not physical prowess, but the collective psychological resilience to normalize the impossible and then overcome it anyway. The first disasters strike with calculated precision. Tsunamis in the Pacific, earthquakes across major fault lines, unprecedented storm systems converging on population centers. The hegemony expects civilization collapse within days, communications breakdown within hours. Instead, something unprecedented occurs. Global communication networks reroute through backup systems and improvised alternatives. Emergency responses mobilize with practiced efficiency, using protocols developed for theoretical doomsday scenarios, ones the hegemony dismissed as aspirational rather than operational. Humanity coordinates a measured, methodical response. Guided by Soren's knowledge of hegemony technology, Maya's team locates underwater gravitational disruptors. Military submarines deploy alongside civilian deep-sea vessels in an impromptu coalition. When hegemony ships enter Earth's orbit, prepared for minimal resistance, they instead encounter a unified response. Thousands of transmission signals broadcasting on frequencies no human technology should access, all variations of the same message. "We see you. We know you. We welcome peaceful contact. We will respond decisively to aggression." Earth governments reveal classified information. They've been aware of extraterrestrial observation for decades, maintaining public denial while quietly developing countermeasures. Human predictive psychology teams had modeled potential first contact scenarios, including hostile ones, developing response patterns the hegemony never anticipated. The hegemony retreat triggers a diplomatic crisis unprecedented in galactic history, as Earth, a pre-contact civilization, demands and receives Confederation recognition. In the aftermath, as humanity joins interstellar society, the Confederation's Xenological Council publishes their assessment. The most significant threat humans pose isn't their technology or biology, but their psychological framework that processes existential threats as surmountable challenges. They have evolutionary adaptations not to avoid crisis, but to function optimally within it. What other species experience as extraordinary, humans experience as Tuesday. The greatest human achievement isn't space travel or nuclear physics. It's their capacity to normalize the impossible, then achieve it anyway. News broadcasts worldwide report unprecedented natural disasters with the same tone used for traffic reports. Tsunami sirens wail across Pacific coastlines. Earthquake alerts ping on millions of phones simultaneously. Storm warning systems activate across 3 continents. The Hegemony Monitoring Station orbiting beyond lunar detection range records exactly what they predicted. Communications overload, power grid failures, transportation system collapse. Commander Draft forwards preliminary success metrics to Admiral Vex. The human response perfectly matches their models. Initial emergency mobilization followed by inevitable resource depletion. Then something changes. 3 hours after primary power failure in North America, alternative communication networks activate. Not government emergency systems, improvised civilian infrastructure using technologies cobbled together from gaming computers, repurposed satellites, and amateur radio networks. Similar patterns emerge across every affected region. The expected communications collapse simply. Doesn't happen. Impossible. Drav mutters, recalibrating sensors. Their infrastructure should be crippled. On Earth, Maya's team coordinates from Jackson's restaurant kitchen, now transformed into an improbable command center. Devon's engineering background helped identify gravitational anomalies where hegemony devices must be located. Alina's endurance athlete community volunteered as couriers when digital communications became unreliable. Hiroshi's diving contacts investigate underwater anomalies. We've located 14 devices, Maya tells Torin, pointing to a map covered with handwritten notations. Military's been informed. They're saying they already knew something was happening but couldn't identify the technology. The military knew. Torin asks. Surprised. A new voice answers from the doorway. We've been tracking extraterrestrial activity since 1947. A woman in civilian clothes but unmistakably military-bearing enters. Dr. Sarah Chen, Department of Extraterrestrial Assessment. Technically doesn't exist. She approaches Soren without fear. We've known about observers like you for decades. Policy was non-interference until we understood intentions. Recent events clarified those intentions. How did you know? Torin asks. Humans notice patterns, she says simply. We just pretend not to. Within days, military and civilian cooperation neutralizes enough hegemony devices to stabilize the crisis. When hegemony ships decloak in Earth orbit, prepared for final containment protocols, something unprecedented awaits them. Thousands of transmission signals broadcasting on frequencies human technology shouldn't access, all variations of one message. We see you. We know you. We welcome peaceful contact. We will respond decisively to aggression. The hegemony retreat triggers crisis in galactic politics, a pre-contact civilization demonstrating post-contact capabilities. The Confederation, forced to acknowledge the situation, opens formal relations with Earth. As humanity joins interstellar society, Soren presents their final assessment to the Xenological Council. The most remarkable human trait isn't their technology or biology. It's their psychological framework that processes existential threats as surmountable challenges. They normalize crisis, adapt to it, overcome it. What other species experience as extraordinary, humans experience as Tuesday. Their greatest achievement isn't space travel or nuclear physics. It's their capacity to face the impossible, consider it normal, then accomplish it anyway.